So we're going to get started. My name is Dr. Rayanne King, and I'll be presenting to you about the roles of urban school principals' perception of data-informed decision-making. And I'll start off by telling you a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Dr. Rayanne King. I'm the owner of Dr. Rayanne King Consulting LLC. I have had the opportunity to work with a couple of different organizations, such as Johns Hopkins University, Bowie State University, a new company called Invictus Mentis, and a couple of other organizations. I graduated from Howard with my doctorate in educational leadership and policy studies. I was a fellow with the National Council of Measurements and Education for 2 years. And I'm currently a principal. I have 19 years experience. I'm a principal currently at Apple Tree in Washington, D.C. I've taught K through 5. I've been a data coach, a testing coordinator for middle and high school. I've been a new mentor for new teacher coaching, and I've been a math coach. I'm a mom to an amazing golden doodle, Penny, who is upstairs with her cousin. I'm a Muntie to my niece Sarah, and she'll be graduating this year. Very excited about that. I'm also an avid traveler and an author. I just finished writing and publishing my second book, and this one is The Traveler's Almanac, a pocket guide to 24 countries. So you can find that on Amazon, and also you can find me on Instagram at Dr. Rayanne King, Rayanne underscore Dr. underscore Rayanne King, and my Gmail, Dr. Rayanne King at gmail.com. And that is about me. So we're going to get into the research and where I am. So when I was doing my dissertational work, it was a birth of different experiences through my experience as a doctoral student. This topic started with me interviewing for assistant principal roles. And I interviewed at a school that was extremely wealthy, extremely well-to-do. The students were congressmen and, diplomats' children. It was a public school. They were it was a well put together war machine. I remember during the process speaking with some teachers, and they're like, it's a great experience. Many of the students come with varying opportunities to have already mastered a second language or in the process of mastering a second language before they hit kindergarten. They have opportunities for travel and experiences. And the teacher said, it's pretty much an easy job. It's great. The children do well. And after I left, I was driving home, very reflective on the experience. And I was passing a more urban area, diverse area, with mostly brown and Black students. And I noticed that all of those students had uniforms, and I just left the experience where none of the children were uniformed. And I kind of said to myself, thought this was a uniform district. And I just was reflecting on the thought of, if that teacher that was at that more affluent school was transitioned to an area where the students did not have as many opportunities and were not presented with the chance to have a second language or have tutoring before kindergarten, would that teacher be so highly effective? Because majority of the time we look at effectiveness as student achievement and outcomes. And clearly, you will probably say to yourself, I'm saying to myself, no. And the question just was like a issue inside me, like, we're identifying effective teachers, but how are we truly doing this? In the beginning, I remember my first very class I sat into, the teacher talked about your lens and how your experiences create how you see the world. And as I was experiencing these things, my lens of achievement gap versus opportunity gap began to develop, in my lens of understanding that the teacher that maybe is in a more area where the students don't have as many opportunities, that their data is not going to have the highest outcomes, that even their growth might not show the myriad of growth that has happened with their students. So how are we truly determining the effectiveness of a teacher? Fast forward to me being a principal and me doing my research, it still is a puzzling question. And then with my experience as being a data coach, and then my experience of working 2 years with the fellowship with the National Council of Measurement in Education, it really was more of a highlight to how are we quantifying this information to put the best teachers in front of all students. So with my dissertational research, originally I started with the exploratory study of the perception of teacher effectiveness and examination of the lens of urban school principals. And the purpose of the research was to do a qualitative phenomenological study on the evaluation of the lived experience of principals through the evaluation process used within urban schools to determine teacher effectiveness. And the part that I didn't carry over to the current research was the other part of my research originally was to examine whether teachers believe that the feedback provided by the principal has supported the improvement of instruction and student achievement. So from there, my problem of practice was formulated by Jacob and Lefgren and Donaldson, and I developed the problem of practice that urban school principals' lens regarding effective teaching has shaped the result of classroom evaluations of teachers, despite the design of the evaluation instrument being used. And combed through the literature. We looked at, well, meaning me, looked at conceptualization of teacher effectiveness and content knowledge, teacher effectiveness and student achievement, exploring teacher evaluations, development of teacher evaluations, the type of comprehensive evaluations, principals' roles in evaluations, identifying effective teachers and principals' feedback in teacher education. And from the research yield the understanding of teacher effectiveness. And it really wasn't really one great definition. So I had to look at many different ones to form a really good definition. So part of it was looking at Heck, who said teacher effectiveness is related to the differences in student outcome. Ellett and Tettle said that good teachers were outstanding members of the community who were viewed as possessing high moral and ethical standards, who had basic reading skills, preferably at a high school level, and were good role models for students. And that was very interesting, a concept. And Strong, Wade, and Grant looked and said effective teachers are teachers who students experience high academic growth. So reflecting back on the story I just spoke about, how the teacher said the students came with tutoring, they came with all of these opportunities to have a strong foundation. So when we're looking at academic growth, or we're looking at student outcome, it wouldn't be hard for a teacher that has a strong foundation to move students towards that. So that brought me to my research questions, and I had two of them, but I'm going to focus on the one that just really looks at the principal's perception. And it was, how do principals use their perceptions of effective teaching to evaluate a teacher's performance? And from that, you had all these sub questions, because there, through the research, it was just coming up like, how do principals use their personal feelings towards teaching staff to influence the determination of effectiveness and evaluations? And how does their feelings towards the district, how does that affect it, and how they view the evaluation tool? How does their experience as being a leader or lack thereof shape their understanding of effective teacher? And how does the evaluation instrument allow a principal to rely on their personal understanding of effective teaching? And in the dissertational work, to come to this understanding, I had to create a framework. And the framework is the characteristics of teacher effectiveness model. And I used research from Kennedy, Elias, Ingalls, Jacob, and Lefgren to develop this framework. And through the framework, we really started with the principal lens, because a lens is how you see the world, how things, your experiences and your beliefs shape the world. And I was able to narrow down 4 lens in which I was able to determine through the literature how principals really build their lens. 1 is the principal's feelings towards the teachers. 2 is the principal's feeling towards the district. 3, the principal's instructional leadership experience and the evaluation instrument, which was kind of just spoke upon. And then I looked at, I have a horrible thing saying we got to apologize. Then I looked at what characteristics does the literature say is characteristics of a teacher. or effective teacher. And I looked at teacher preparation programs. What teacher certification? Do they have a certification? Years experience, teachers evaluations, and then student achievement. And you take those characteristics to filter it through the principal's perspective, which is filtering through these four main areas to then produce you a determinant of teacher effectiveness. So with the characteristics of the teacher effectiveness model, we looked at, again, those 5 emerging characteristics of teacher preparation program, teacher certification, years experience, student achievement, and teacher evaluation, and filtered it through what we understand to be the perspective of the principal, which is their feelings towards the teacher, their feelings towards the district, their years of experience as a leader, and the evaluation tool to then be able to determine an effective teacher or teacher effectiveness. From that research, 3 emerging themes came out. The first one was principals' relationships with teachers. The second theme was principals' personal beliefs, and the third was principals' experience. When you think about principals' relationship with the teachers, being that I am a principal, it is huge. That relationship is built of many things. Trust is built of just your interactions with the teacher. Do they come to work? Are they reliable? Do they work with others? Do they plan and prepare for their students? Are they communicating with families? All those different components are developed. Yes, and it can break a school. All those components are developing to determine like how well are we having and what type of people are we putting in front of our students. The principal has to lean on their own understanding and their own personal beliefs and systems, which was hopefully what got them the job, to see, is this person that was hired, whether by the district, did you inherit them, or hired sometimes by you, are they the best fit to bring bring the best out of your students? The second one was the principal's personal belief. I always tell my teachers, what is your why? Why are you here? Why are you doing this work? Why are you getting up? Why are you staying late? Why are you doing all of this? What is your why? Is it for a paycheck? Is it that your belief that student achievement is needed? Is your belief, which is my belief, that every student should have the opportunity to have the highest level of instruction? My personal belief is what drives me. One of my biggest part of my personal belief that shapes my lens is I'm a stage 4 cancer survivor. And I don't have children, but I do know that if we don't have highly qualified doctors in place, then I know I wouldn't be here. So my question to all my teachers are, your belief system has to push you to know that if we're not teaching children to their highest level, then maybe next time when I get sick, God forbid, or if anything happens, who will be there to save my life? And so I know that pouring in the students creates a pool of highly effective, highly charged, highly talented individuals. And then a principal's experience. What was your experience as a teacher? What was your academic experience? What was your experience as now a principal? Your years of experience. Being a principal changes your lens. Quick anecdotal is when I came out the classroom, and I coach a lot of new leaders around this. When I came out the classroom, you have your peers and you're like, "Ooh, what are you doing? Oh, wow, y'all doing that? Oh, wow." And sometimes you'll listen to what people around you are saying they're doing and start developing doubts about your own practice. Like, "Ooh, what else you doing? No, I didn't do that." So when I came out the classroom and had to deal with some of my peers on a more leadership level, I was just kind of jaw dropped at what they weren't doing. I'm like, well, you said you was doing that, then, but you said you was doing this, and I wasn't seeing it happening. And as you go up in leadership, you have more of those experiences where it's almost like, oh, well, this is what I thought was going to happen, but this is the result. And those experiences shape how you see and view the world. So looking at the research through the findings, I was able to find that belief in relationships came together as an extremely strong comparison. People really felt, though, belief in your relationships with your teachers was what was the one way that you can really identify their effectiveness. Because your relationships with your teachers is how you're seeing them and how you're experiencing and interacting with them. And that experience and what you're seeing is constantly being filtered through your belief, because your belief is what drives you. And when you see people doing things, it's like, oh, I connect to that. The next one that really was a confining was belief and experience. How I see the world and my experience shapes how I see the world and what I believe. So that is another thing. Like, these are my beliefs and this is my experience and this is what you're doing. So in my experience, you're going to be great. You're doing good. You're really making a difference. And the last one was the comparison of experience with relationships. And as you see, I'm a true proponent. I don't know if anybody else uses the Clifton Strengths Finders. It is amazing. I have my staff do it because it's a way that you can truly learn a person, to coach them and just work with them. One year I did it with just my teachers. I didn't do it with my teaching assistants and my other staff members. I just did it with my teachers, and I did it with the front office and leadership. And I was doing great with them, but with my teaching assistants, it was a lot of issues. I was like, I'm not understanding their thought process. Why are they doing these things? Well, the next year, I did it with everyone, and it was eye-opening. I'm like, oh, you're a learner. Oh, this is how you work. And one thing I have a lot of, believe it or not, on my staff is belief. And when you know belief is a strong, strong, strong strength for people, you have to set the tone and you have to be transparent and you have to let them know where you're coming from at all time, and then tap into their why, because their belief is driving their experience, which is going to drive your experience. So belief is a powerful, powerful tool. So if you don't use it, if you haven't done it before, definitely try it. It is amazing. So from the findings, it was able to determine that districts and schools must be able to calibrate the lens of principles to concretely identify the qualifications of an effective teacher. It is essential that school districts know that decisions regarding teacher effectiveness determined by principles can have long-term effects on decision making. That is so true. If you are not putting the right people in place, it's going to be off or not. It is very hard to like someone, but yet be honest about their work. For some people, it's very difficult. It's like, well, I like them. Well, they're young. Oh, they're a single mother. Oh, their dog just died. Versus just saying, how are they moving in the work? Because me keeping you and you're ineffective means that there's another 18 to 80 students that could potentially, or even more, have an ineffective teacher placed in front of them that will yield gaps and not allow them to have the opportunity of a highly effective teacher. So how do we get to the current research? It is an extension of part of my dissertation. It is me then looking at the data saying, okay, I looked before at the relationships, the evaluation tools, I looked at their feelings, but now let's look at the data, because we all love to say we are data-driven, data-informed. However, we're not taking the moment to acknowledge that my experience, how I see things, my relationships, I have to use all of that information and then filter the data through that. I can set data of student achievement in front of everybody, but if you are looking at pre-K early childhood data and you've never taught early childhood, you never was a principal in early childhood, you'll look at the data and have your own perceptions, but are you truly understanding the information? It's not saying that what you see isn't powerful, it's not going to move the work, but does your lens allow you to see all areas? As a data coach, I say this, and with all the love in the world, I had a principal one time that would tell me, I need it to look this way. And you would say, well, keep your integrity. And you're like, okay, I'm gonna keep it. I need to keep a job too. And he just did not like me to put presentations together that had bad data. I had to find a way to make the data say what he needed to say in front of the district. And that was another part of my lens, another thing that shaped my understanding that sometimes even the data that I'm presented, I always look at it with a slant. I always want to know, well, who put it together? Well, who analyzed it? Well, who prepared it? Because that who sometimes gives me an understanding of what I'm truly looking at. Very few organizations give teachers and leaders raw data. But why? Because the raw data, people, they love to say, well, teachers do not, and a lot of leaders do not know how to synthesize data. True, but raw data gives you too much information sometimes and gives information that at times can lose grants, can lose opportunities for district incentives. So people sometimes have to make the data say what they want. So with all that being said, that is how I got to teacher effectiveness and data-informed decision-making, focusing on urban schools principles perception. And again, it's an extension of the research asking how data-informed decision-making can serve as a data point to determine a teacher's effectiveness. So the purpose of this study is to really understand how embedded data-informed decision-making processes and tools can support principals in determining teachers' effectiveness, thereby enhancing the accuracy and the reliability of evaluations. And my statement of the problem for this actual research is urban school principals' perception of effective teaching significantly shapes classroom evaluation results, which is embedded in data-informed decision-making processes and tools that determine the teacher effectiveness. So here's some terms because I wanted to make sure everybody's on the same page as far as what do I mean by teacher effectiveness. So teacher effectiveness is composed of a myriad of components, like we went over just recently, and we are looking at qualities like caring, compassion, patience, structural organization to support emotional needs. That is a big thing right now in education, the SEL, social emotional learning. So that is really, if teachers can't be nice to students, it is a problem. I tell my staff all the time, I want three things from them. And my philosophy with my teachers is this: listen, I don't want you to do too much, but three things. One, I want good data. The reason I want good data, because with good data means there's going to be good instruction, high quality instruction. The second, I want happy students. Happy students means that there's a lot of social emotional support being provided. And then I want happy parents, because happy parents mean they're not bothering me, which is always my last one. And people always like, oh, that's great. And lastly, teachers must have skills. They should have classroom strategies and behavior, planning preparation, reflecting on teaching, and professionalism to produce student growth and mastery. Also, pedagogical knowledge. That would be great too. Next, we're looking at evaluation instruments. An evaluation instrument is a set of criteria, reference measures used to determine a teacher's level of effectiveness in the classroom. Next, we have our principal perception, which we've been talking about, is their lens in which they see the world, the lens in which they develop his or her experience as an instructor and a school leader, the lens in which they see the teachers and how they filter those four big things: their feelings towards the teacher, the feeling towards the district or school, the feeling towards the instrument, and the evaluation. The characteristics of teacher effective model, I went over that already, about those four areas in which the lens of the principles developed, and then those 5 components that come from that. And then data-informed decision-making. So data-informed decision-making for this research is a systematic collection that requires data analysis and followed with the interpretation of data to inform educational practices and systematic policies, which enable leaders to ground decisions in empirical evidence. So I went through the literature, did a little bit more deep dive into teacher effectiveness, and it's kind of the same thing of it's important for schools to improve student achievement. So it's essential that you have good teachers in all classrooms, highly effective teaching, which cannot be subjective. And that's another part of that, the look of the subjectivity of what's highly effective, which is why we put standards in place. Issues in teacher effectiveness can be difficult to identify for principals focusing merely on evaluations, because the evaluation doesn't always pick up some of the key points of a highly effective teacher. And then the research shows and found that in the US, candidates were at a lower level of effectiveness compared to Taiwan, Singapore, and Switzerland, which is very easy why everybody says we're right now we're not at the highest level of our global powerhouse as far as education, because the standards for teachers being put through teacher program preparation programs are low. Right now, we have a teacher shortage, so it's going to be a flux of not highly qualified teachers, people from career changing and things like that. I can get on a whole nother soapbox about those career changes that was a doctor, now all of a sudden like a medical doctor, now they are a teacher. As a new mentor coach, when I was a new mentor coach for new teachers, I saw a lot of that. And believe it or not, a doctorate in medicine does not equate a good teacher. But again, that's another soapbox. And then we look at teacher evaluation, determining how you develop new observational measures that can accurately assess teachers' effectiveness is important. And the value add model was developed. The value add model is a great model. It's been the best one we've had so far. Does it need some support? Yes. But the value add model is the best that we have at seeing how learning has progressed throughout the school year. The only pushback I have sometimes with instruments is the validity of them and keeping them up to date. At one of my previous appointments, we had this attribute checklist, right? And on this attribute checklist, the teachers need to score 80%. And it was things like, are they prepared? Are they asking the students questions? Did they restate the lesson? Did they talk about background knowledge? And as leaders that were using this checklist, we were going to the table to our organization saying, listen, they can be extremely poor teachers, but they can still make an 80 on this checklist. We need something more concrete to hold teachers more accountable to, remove them from the district or remove them as a classroom teacher. And it took us fighting as the individuals using the tool, seeing that it's flawed. It took us fighting, and they kind of switched it up, but they didn't too much. The next one is principals perception. As systems enact standards and accountabilities and policies, they do so with the expectation that the policy's impact will rebound through the system. However, policy environments contain a multitude of actors who interpret state policies and view them differently. And when you start having people do a lot of interpretation